Hey Algebra 1, and thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at lesson 7.1, adding and subtracting polynomials. Today we're going to be looking for 9 things to write down, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we want to know is what a polynomial is, and what I have highlighted in green and in the green box is important to write down on this slide. I know it's a lot of information, but it'll help you find your notes a little bit easier. So polynomial is just a monomial or a sum of monomials. Monomial means one, so poly just means many. Each monomial is called a term of polynomial. So a polynomial with 2 terms would be binomial. A polynomial with 3 terms is a trinomial. We'll only see binomials and trinomials today. If it's more than 2, then you can or more than 3, then you can name it a polynomial. The other thing I need you to know is what the leading coefficient is, the degree, and then the constant term. The leading coefficient is always the coefficient in the first term, and the first term is always the number with the highest degree. That's called standard form. It says that right here. A polynomial in one variable is in standard form when the exponents of the terms decrease from left to right. So just make sure that, if you're noticing here in your example, we have 2x to the third is first, and then x to the second is next, and then x, and then a constant. And we've kind of talked about this throughout the entire year too. And then the leading coefficient, that's just the number or the coefficient with the highest number of a polynomial or the highest number of an exponent. Let's go ahead and take time now to pause the video here and write down what you see on this slide for number 1. And then once you're done, click play so you can see how it's done. So what we're going to do first is just classify polynomials. These are super easy to do, and all you have to do for this one is identify the degree and the leading coefficient. So first it says to write it in standard form, and this is not in standard form yet because my exponents are not in decreasing order. So what I would do first is put my x to the third first, so negative x to the third, and then plus 15x because that's positive, and then plus 3. So the constants always go in the back, and the leading coefficients or the highest exponents always go in the front. And then it says identify the degree. So the degree is 3 because of the highest exponent, and the leading coefficient is -1 because the leading coefficient is the number that's in the very, very front. You can just pretend that there's a -1 right here in front of this negative x. Okay? So this is what we're going to try for number 2. It's a little bit different though. It says identify, first write it in standard form, and then you're going to identify the degree and classify each polynomial by the number of terms. And what that means by classifying is it monomial or trinomial or polynomial. Okay? Or sorry, monomial, trinomial, and binomial. Those are the ones that are options here. So let's go ahead and try that, and then once you're done, click play to check your work. So let's go ahead and pause right here. So number 2 is actually already written in standard form because this is the only exponent we have. So standard form is -3z to the 4th power. The degree is 4, and this is considered a monomial. For number 3, the standard form would be 5x squared would be first, and then minus x, and then plus 4. The degree in this one, I'm just write DEG, is 2, and this one is called a trinomial. And then for number 4, standard form is q to the 5th power plus 8q. Remember, we want the highest exponents first. The degree is 5, and this is called a binomial. Okay, so that's all we have to do here. Hopefully we got those right. Pretty simple and straightforward. Here are 3 more that we're going to try. This one, though, it says still to put it in standard form, still identify the degree, but now we're going to define or find the leading coefficient. And then you can classify the polynomial by the number of terms. So there is Standard form, degree, leading coefficient, and polynomial. So that's 4 things you're going to do for each one of these. Let's go ahead and pause so you can try 5, 6, and 7. And once you're done, click play to check your work. So standard form for number 5 is negative 9z plus 4. The degree in number 5 is 1. In number 5, this is also called a binomial. Oops, I forgot leading coefficient. Leading coefficient was next. The leading coefficient is negative 9, and then this is called a binomial. For number 6, in standard form, we would have negative t to the third plus t to the second minus 10t. So in descending order for the exponents. The degree is 3. The leading coefficient is negative 1. And since there are 3 terms here, we're going to call this a trinomial. For number 7, standard form would be x to the third plus 2.8x. The degree is 3. The leading coefficient is 1. And this one would be called a binomial because there's only 2 terms. The last thing is something that we've actually seen before. We're going to be talking about finding the sum and finding the difference, or adding and subtracting polynomials. So what we're going to do first is just make sure that there's nothing to be distributed. Remember, if there's nothing out here outside the parentheses, that just means you're distributing a 1. So for the first section, I'm just multiplying 1 by each of these terms. So that means I'll have 2x to the third, still a minus 5x squared, and still a plus x. Same thing for here. I'm distributing a positive 1, so I'll have a plus 2x squared again, a plus x to the third, and still a minus 1. Now that I've done distributing, I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. And just to keep in mind, like terms must have the same exponent and variable. So I can only combine the 2x to the third with the other x to the third. 2x to the third plus x to the third gives me 3x to the third. The next thing I can combine is the negative 5x squared, put a box around this one, and 2x squared. That's going to give me negative 3x squared. This x by itself, can't combine it with anything else, so I'm just going to write plus x. And then the minus 1, also can't combine it with anything else, so I'm just going to write minus 1. So this would be my final answer here. And notice again, it's written in standard form with the highest exponent listed first and then descends down. The next example you're probably going to see in your homework is how to find the difference. And this one's a little bit different, pun intended. You're still going to distribute a 1, which is a normal 1, in the first polynomial, or this binomial. So I still get 4n squared plus 5. But notice what happens next in the second one. Technically, I'm distributing a negative 1, which means everything changes to its opposite. So that means negative 1 times negative 2n squared is a positive 2n squared. Negative 1 times a negative 2n is negative 2n. And negative 1 times negative 4 is a positive 4. So you just change everything to its opposite just in this last section. And then you can combine like terms like we did before. 4n squared plus 2n squared, they have the same variable and exponent. That's going to be 6n squared. Negative 2n, there's nothing else that can go with that, so I'll just write minus 2n. And then 5 and a positive 4 make 9, so plus 9 would be added onto that. So my final answer is 6n squared minus 2n plus 9. So these last two you're going to try. It says find the sum or the difference. Remember to distribute your 1s or your negative 1s, depending on where it is or what's in front of it, and then combine like terms. Let's pause here, try 8 and 9, and then once you're done, click play. Apologies for that. Let's go ahead and get started for number 8. We're going to go and distribute, so I get x squared minus x minus 2, so nothing changes, and the same thing for the next monomial, or binomial. 7x squared minus x. I'm going to go ahead and combine my x squareds. So x squared and 7x squared gives me 8x squared. I can combine my x's. This is negative x and another negative x makes negative 2x, so minus 2x. And then this minus 2, nothing else can go with it, so it just goes at the very end. So my final answer for 8 is 8x squared minus 2x minus 2. Number 9, you should have noticed that you're still distributing a positive 1 for the first polynomial. So I still have p squared plus p plus 3. But when I'm distributing a negative 1 to the second trinomial, I'm going to change everything to its opposite. So a positive 4p squared, a positive p, and a negative 3. Then I'm going to go ahead and combine p squareds. P squared and 4p squared gives me 5p squared. 1p and another 1p gives me 2p, so positives. And then positive 3 and negative 3 actually cancel out. So my answer for number 9 is just 5p squared plus 2p. You could have also said 5p squared plus 2p plus 0, and that's the same thing, but this would be better written as it is in standard form because plus 0 does not change anything. That's going to conclude our notes today on 7.1. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.